Karen, it's so good to see you. How are you?
Hey, Georgie, it's great to see you too. I'm well. I
Good.
hope you're well.
Yes, we've got a lovely day. So we're recording this on a rare sunny day in Seattle. I just say that to keep people away. The secret is it's always sunny in Seattle. We just don't.
That's right. It's always sunny in Seattle. I think there's a show that'll be called Always Sunny in Seattle.
If there's not, there should be. And we could start with.
Yeah.
So thank you to everyone who is tuning in. My name is Georgie. I'm the Director of Marketing at Girl Friday Productions, which is a publishing services company here in Seattle. That's how I say it to people, Karen, because we're unique in the way that we're an indie publishing house, but then also we work with traditional publishers to produce beautifully, well, equally beautiful, indie or not, but we work with traditional publishers as well. So Karen, you have worked at Girl Friday for how long now? Longer than me.
Gosh, I think it's been 6 or 7 years, I think, something like that. Yeah.
Prior
Yeah.
to that, you were in the publishing world for several years as well.
Yes, I worked for a publishing company for several years. And before that, my first career, second career was in technology. So I've got a varied past.
Yes.
a storied past. That's right. Yeah.
I love that. Yes. So today's topic is, so you want to indie publish, which we felt was like a pretty good beginning, because
Yeah.
I know that in the past, self-publishing was kind of a dirty word and people didn't want to talk about it, or they thought it meant a certain level of book.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, several years ago, if an author wanted to self-publish, they had very few options for professional services. So they were sort of left on their own to create their work. And it ended up maybe not being great editorially. Printing was not great, and the design, if you were left to your own devices, I'll tell you what, there are a lot of things that I wouldn't want to do on my own, like cut my hair. You really want a professional to do that. So I think, when authors were having to, trying this out before, they were really the pioneers of trying to publish on their own. And so there was a lot of, maybe not so great quality books that were produced at the time. But that has changed a lot. And we've seen that change, especially in the music industry and then the gaming industry. There are so many great options for content creators to be able to produce a very high quality product. And that's especially true in publishing now. So everything from getting professional editorial and design services to printing and marketing, as you know, in your role as a marketer, that there are some great options out there for independently published authors to get the help and support they need so that their book can stand on the shelf next to any traditionally published book and hold its own.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when you said self-published in the past, it meant a couple different things.
Yeah.
I think people probably meant that it wasn't good enough for the book to be picked up by a traditional publisher, which is simply not true, because a traditional publisher perhaps is watching market trends, or we have too many books about wizards, so we're not going to pick up your book at Wizards. But it doesn't mean less than, it's just that they were really following like trend reports and that sort of thing. So I do think that an indie published book, again, is not that no one would pick it up. It's that I believe in it enough that that there is a marketplace for that. So I think that's really true. And then how the whole traditional publishing world just shifted anyway, as far as print on demand versus having 10,000 books in a warehouse. I mean, I always challenge people to have two books side by side and say, which one do you think is traditionally published and which is print on demand? Like, you can't.
Yeah, that's right. And traditional publishers are really being careful with their spending. They are using print-on-demand printing for a lot of their books now, and they're focusing their printing dollars to, on an offset print run, which, can produce fantastic quality, but they're not doing that for all of their books, especially books that are on their backlist. So it's I think that what a lot of people might not realize is that an author who wants to publish independently can have the same caliber of book as a traditionally published book.
Right. Well, if it has a, it's properly edited, has a great cover design that looks great as a thumbnail, we call it correctly, that sort of thing, because people just kind of know when a book feels off. So I do think that there is something to be said to that, like indie published book that isn't done in a professional way. So I think there is kind of a difference there. But
absolutely.
I love what you're saying there. And I mean, here's some of the numbers that we had pulled before this chat, that there are 4,500 books published each day. I even think it's more than that, Karen. I think that it's probably.
Yeah, I think that's a solid average that, we know, and it's probably changing and going up too. So that's a lot of competition out there for every author who wants to get their book noticed and find their readership. That's tough. But it's great for readers. And, that means you've got a lot of selection. You've got a lot of great stories out there. So that also means that traditional publishers aren't publishing all of that work. There's no way they can do that. So, there are a lot of options there for the indie author to be able to, like you said, get a professionally produced product and with the right support and help, of course, but then also find their readership and raise or get interest and buzz around their book.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's a lot of books, but I always say a lot of opportunity as well. And then another number that we found is that 65% of those books are sold on Amazon, which is amazing, which is like.
Yeah, it's 65% of all books purchased are purchased online. And then of that percentage, it's about 85% that are purchased on Amazon. Oh. So that's sort of a percentage. It's still huge. And what that means is that the person who's buying a book has options. They can buy online, they can buy at a bookstore, they can go to a library. So that's great for readers that they have those options. So what I think is really important is that the independently published book needs to be in all those places. And that's where I think it's great that authors have the ability to do that now, especially with some of the print-on-demand platforms and the distribution that they are that they're using and all the channels that it goes out to. It makes it possible for authors to find their readership, and they don't have to be traditionally published.
Yeah. Well, I love a bookstore. I mean, if there's a bookstore around me, I am just like magnetically pulled into that bookstore. But what's nice about so many books being sold online is, as an indie published author, that you're in this like-minded company. Like, it's not out of the reality that your book could be listed right along next to someone that you've loved this entire time and wanted to write books, like Stephen King or Judy Blume or Margaret Atwood, something like that. Like, you could actually, it's almost kind of like the kid that is recording music and uploading it to YouTube directly. It's kind of taking that leap of faith and putting it out there and makes everything available to you. Another thing that I always think is really interesting is the evolution of cover design. So when I first started at Girl Friday, which I had a marketing background, but not in book publishing, so I kind of came into this wonderment of the world, is that just a beautifully designed book cover has to look good in this little tiny thumbnail, which is so interesting to me, because it totally changes the world of cover design.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to the idea of point of sale. Where is that the person who's buying your book? Where are they discovering your book? How are they evaluating it? And very few books are picked up and held and flipped over and flipped through these days. So that goes back to having a great cover design that not only looks good on a physical bookshelf, but looks good on an online bookshelf or an online retail product detail page. So, that, and there are a lot of components to that. It's got to you've got to be able to read that cover. You also want to be drawn in by that cover. And then the other piece that's really important is that product description text. And that is critical. And it's the hardest, 150 words to write ever. It is so hard. So you know this well as a marketer that, that takes some professional help to get that text to not be a book report, to intrigue your audience, and then also let them know a little bit about what they're getting into.
Oh, absolutely. And another thing that we look at in marketing is that it's very keyword rich without saying over and over, murder mystery, murder mystery, murder mystery.
Right.
Something like that. Like you just want to have it written in such a way, because that's how it's getting pulled up, at least on Amazon, their algorithm.
That's right.
Because they pay attention to everything. So what's great, I love looking at the back cover copy. I think it's really, really interesting, and helping as a marketing material, which I never really thought of before, but really it is. So when it comes to indie publishing, who do you think, Karen, is the perfect candidate to indie publish their book?
I think the perfect candidate is someone with an entrepreneurial spirit, someone who is excited to be as much a part of every aspect of producing that book as they can, and somebody who really wants to be the boss of their book and make sure that they are the ones that are reaping the benefits of publishing independently. So, we're talking a little bit about the different models. The traditional model, the author only takes a very small portion of that revenue for themselves. There's an agent, there's the publishing house, there's the printer, there's the distributor, and the retailer. So in the traditional model, they're all taking huge portions of that revenue pie. Where on the other side of that, for the independent publisher, the author is getting up to 70% of that. And then the only other parties that you're splitting your revenue with are the distributor and the printer. So it's a huge advantage for somebody who really wants to be the boss of their book and enjoy the revenue associated with that.
Yeah, totally agree. I do think that you have to have a lot of hustle. You have to be willing to work your book, always that sort of thing. I also think, and I always question this, like if you already have a big platform, if you have thousands of followers, or you're a celebrity or an influencer or something like that, you really don't need a traditional publisher. I mean, because if you did one post and you could sell 1 million books, why wouldn't you do that? You would do it. And then why would you give away the biggest piece of your pie to the publicist and the distributor and the marketer and stuff like that? Like you would want to keep that in-house, I would think. So again, that's the whole boss of your book. So
yeah, absolutely. Especially for that person, like you were talking where they've got a great platform already and they've got a following. I think that the traditional publishing model doesn't really pencil out well for them. So I think that the self-published or the independent publishing model is much better.
Yeah, I agree. And then a question that I get, and I wonder if you get it from your clients, is do you think if I publish this book, that a traditional publisher will pick it up and I'm going to get the big check and they're going to buy all my future books? What do you tell people when they ask you that question?
Well, we've certainly seen it happen where an author's debut novel, it becomes wildly successful, and then a traditional publisher comes in and says, hey, I'd love to acquire the rights to your next book and the book beyond that. So it does happen, but I really would want to know, if I were that author, I would want to know, well, what's in it for me? Because I'm already getting up to 70% of my revenue just for me. So how are you going to make this worth it to me? And it would have to be a really compelling offer, in my opinion, for that author who's already experienced that kind of success to be swayed to the traditional model. Yeah,
that'd have to be one whopper of a contract, because now you've already done it yourself. Why do you need the big publisher? Because often like it sounds very glamorous to say, hey, I got a book deal, or it's being published by so-and-so. But at the same time, it's not really like that. Like if you got a signing bonus, how much is that going to be? I mean, I question that amount right there.
Yeah.
And then if they turn around and say to you, well, then you're in charge of your own marketing, you're paying an agency or something. So that signing bonus is really null and void, because now you've gotten it and you're just passing it on to the next thing. So I don't really know if it's worth it.
Yeah. Well, and especially when you're giving up a lot of the creative control. So I've talked to a number of authors who've signed deals with traditional publishers, and they have very little say in things that are really important to the author, like the cover design. And that can be a tough pill to swallow. And I'm always hopeful that those authors that have gone the traditional route are really happy with those pieces of it, because if they're not, they really don't have a whole lot of leverage to make a change there. So that can be tough.
Yeah, that was my little timer that we're done with our conversation. But I do want to say that what you were talking about was reminding me that we were lucky enough to work with this client that I will not name, but she had self-published some books, and then she had traditionally published some books.
Yeah.
She was kind of like, great, like I've made it, and now my book is being traditionally published. But in talking to her later, they changed the name of her book. They changed the cover of the book. They held on to it like it wasn't trending right now, like her topic wasn't trending. So they held on to it for a year, and she was like, oh my gosh, like she like sold her baby. And it was very frustrating, I think, to her. And so what I was getting from her is that you have much more control, you have much more ownership. I do think it's not for the weak. Like, it is a lot of work, you have to do a lot of hustle. But I think that in the end, when you actually like play out the numbers, that it's totally worth it. Because obviously, if you come to like a place like Girl Friday, it's a service-based company, so you're going to have to write that check to have your book published. But we have this great chart, and I'll post it on our Facebook page that shows like you may start off kind of down, but in the long run, eventually it's going to trend upwards. Where if you did like a hybrid publisher, it's kind of in the middle. And then traditional, it kind of goes down because they're taking such a huge percent of that.
That's right.
So
so I think you're right. You know, an independent published author needs to have that entrepreneurial spirit, and because being the boss means that you're the boss, so you've got the control and you've got the responsibility to really do the work and be involved. And so, back to your original question, what type of person author is ideal for indie publishing? And I would say somebody who really wants to be part of the process the whole way, and really wants to make sure that they are keeping that larger portion of the revenue, and they're not handing it over to people to just do their thing and then move on to the next book.
It's true. And what someone said to me, which I thought was really smart, is that when you are traditionally published, I'm going to say it wrong because it was really wonderful, and of course it's escaping me, but when you're traditionally published, like you're kind of chasing them, like they're the person, they own the work. And when you're indie publishing and you're doing it yourself and you're calling the shots, like we call you a client, you're not a customer, or you're not like we own you, we're treating you, you really get that client experience because we work for you. Like we want you to be
right.
So,
I mean, we're a service-based company, which means we provide the service to the author or to the client. And so it's in our goal is to reach the client's goals and do everything we can to make sure that their experience is fantastic and that they're really happy in the end with not only the book, but with the process going forward. And their job now is almost a small business owner of promoting that book.
Oh yeah. Yeah. 100%. Well, I thank you so much for your time on this lovely day. Next week, I would just want to say, if people are interested in coming back, which we really hope that you are, our next episode will be me speaking to one of our indie published authors, Kane, who's the author of Bound in Flame, which is the first of a 6-book series that she's publishing. And it's all just beautifully set in Hawaii, makes you feel like you're on vacation when you can't leave your house. So,
oh my gosh, that's going to be great. She's delightful.
Yes, yes. And she gives it to you straight. So it'll be a lively conversation. She's going to probably call me out and say accolades and do all that good stuff. So I hope that everyone's able to join us. But thank you.
Yeah, that'll be a good one.
Yes. All right. Have a good day. I'll see you soon, I hope.
All right. Great talking to you. Bye.